Right. All right. Hi, guys. I'm Mila Siddiqui. I'm a third year political science student. You guys might have remembered me from the introduction presentation. Just a little bit of a rundown in terms of myself. I'm a active lifestyle person. I play basketball, football, rugby, and I have plenty of other interests such as video games, TV, movies, and the next person that's going to be talking after me is Georgie, and she'll tell you guys a little bit about herself.
Hi guys, so I'm Georgie Lowe. I put a little bio about myself together. So I'm a third year English student at the UFC, but I spent my first year at Mount Royal University. So being a transfer student, I've kind of seen what both universities have to offer, like how Mount Royal is kind of a smaller, more individualized learning space versus UC is like a lot bigger, and just different classes and campus size is really interesting to see from my experience. About me, I am a rugby player. I also, what else do I like to do in my spare time? I'm just a reader. I just like to read all the time, which makes sense because I'm an English major, I guess. And then choosing arts, the reason why I was kind of interested in English was in high school. I kind of realized I was better at social studies and English than I was at like chemistry or biology. But also, I was just really interested in being critical and like analyzing to a deeper level. So that's kind of why I thought, well, that's probably the best option for me to explore thoughts in a more critical, diving in option rather than another thing. So that's why I ended up with English. So yeah.
Awesome. So, we do want to talk to you guys a little bit about getting familiar with university and just the general expectations. So, the first thing we'll do to introduce you guys to that concept is show you a course syllabus, which will enable you to understand how to budget your time, as well as get you guys to understand the required courses and averages for getting into university to begin with, specifically the social science program.
Okay, so just here, I decided, or we decided, to include my first semester of second year schedule. So as you can see here, it's pretty, I didn't want to start in the mornings. That was not the life I wanted to live. So because we were in university, I was really able to be flexible with the timing and when worked for me. So like if you guys have jobs or like other outside commitments, although these courses are required courses, there is an option to do them at different times, which is really nice because you guys won't be there 9 till 3:30 like you were in high school. So that's just like really nice in terms of utilizing your schedule to what works best for you, even your best learning times, and just a bunch of like other stuff to help you succeed is really based on the way your schedule sets itself up.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I highly suggest taking those mornings off. It's a big help. Uh,
So, I guess the first kind of topic we wanted to dive into during this presentation was creating connections. And what we mean by this is creating connections between all your courses and your classes and stuff like that. So, even even if you don't notice connections right away during your courses, it doesn't matter because those courses are going to overlap with one another in some way, shape, or form. So it'll help you with background info and just general knowledge of what's going on in the class, which is what I found really beneficial was during my first year and up till now. Courses, I would take a certain course and then like 2 weeks later in another class, it would be mentioned in passing, but I was able to create that connection and I kind of felt a bit on top of the world. Like I know what's going on here. So it just helps you keep up and to stay on task of what's going on and like background info and stuff like that. And what else I wanted to talk about was it also just creating connections will help you understand things on a deeper level. So here I have new understandings through multiple lenses. So, like I said, we all kind of live in our own worldview and our own reality of what we think the world is like. However, when we're creating connections between classes, between the past and the present, between different critical readings within the same sphere. We kind of take ourselves out of our own reality and dive into the reality of the text we're analyzing, which I think is great because it helps broaden our own worldview and our own mindset towards learning. And then that can obviously, like I have here, shape the connections we make today. So, which sounds really cliche, shape the connections we make today, but it's true. Like what we learn in class and we overlap with each other actually is really beneficial in widening our understanding for university and the courses we're in. And just like that, yeah, it'll help us between all of our classes, and it can still be applied later on. Like it's not just like a first year of uni thing. Like you want to be creating connections throughout your whole entire university experience. And there's even like classes you wouldn't necessarily think of. Like I have English classes that obviously overlap, but I'm also in history and religion classes, and those are like major overlaps with one another. So it's really beneficial when we discuss it in both classes. I know what's going on. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of creating connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding connections in your course material actually just shows that you're actually understanding it. Say for me, for example, in political science, we have to read a lot of older texts like The Prince and Machiavelli. While I was reading that text I was able to actually use some of the material, specifically the chapters regarding military mobilization in my other courses about war and security. So these are what we mean by making connections, like finding that material, how it relates to your other work, because a book from 1600 you'd assume has no place in the world today, but there's a lot of fundamental knowledge, foundational knowledge that can be built and applied across any point in history. So continue to make those connections both in and out of the classroom. The next thing that we wanted to talk to you guys today was about essay structure. Obviously, essays are different for each class and each professor, but a dominant and very successful strategy that you'll find in arts is using 85% of your voice and 15% quotation. So what I mean by that is you want to be constantly giving analysis to the content that you're covering. Even though you're using other sources to support your ideas, they're only there as a support. You want them to be essentially the bridge between your argument or essay or idea and the content you're analyzing. So when you're tackling these issues, you have unlimited creativity. You're able to do it in an op-ed. You can write a persuasive essay. You can write critical analyses. There's a lot of ways to tackle an essay. And like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be subjective to whatever course you're taking, but talk to your professors, communicate with them, see how you can excel as well as amplify your papers. Because I find that writing a typical paper, while it can be successful, is oftentimes boring. So you want to talk to your professors about how you can write an essay that is both engaging to them and yourself while covering the material in a meaningful and important way. So moving on from essay structure, we'll get you guys to actually look into the differences between high school and university, because there is an actual difference to the way they're structured. So I'm going to bring up a link here to talk to you guys about this. This is actually a really good source from the University of Toronto, which summarizes how you're taught to write an essay in school, in high school, but how it's different in university. As you can see here, the biggest thing is an essay consists of 3 main points in high school. In university, that does not exist. You can write 20-page essays. So obviously, they're not going to have 3 body paragraphs. And you can also write a 5-page essay and only have like 2 body paragraphs. That's entirely possible. It's just how it logically flows. And supports your ideas, as I previously mentioned. Here, you can learn about the thesis, what value it has in university, how in high school you have to have one. That obviously changes in university. And these last few rules are generally the most important guidelines and key differences between high school and university essay writing. So in high school, you have a formula. In university, it's way less rigid. You're able to be creative, tackle your essays in a more meaningful structure, as well as not be as repetitive. Continue to give a new idea each and every time you write an essay. So these are just some of the ideas that you guys will be going over. All right, and to move on.
So the next topic we wanted to discuss was close reading. So what is a close reading? It basically is exactly what it sounds like. It's just kind of taking a reading and analyzing the text more critically. So like an active reading, really. So instead of just flipping through your pages and going, oh yeah, I read that, it's actually going into the margins, writing it down. If you're not comfortable writing in books, then like writing in a notebook on the side. But yeah, it's just like going in there, writing down your initial thoughts, giving like a summary of what's going on. And have found this really beneficial because it's one of those things where in the moment you're like, oh, I'll remember this. It's totally fine. And then it gets to exam season and you're so stressed out with everything going on and you're like, I don't remember anything. So by having the close reading and the annotations and all that stuff in the margins, you can really remember your initial thoughts and build off those initial thoughts you made. Also, like when we're in class going over it, if someone else says something that's like really insightful, I'll add it to my own annotations. Because it's just, again, like you have your deep reading, but someone else has their deeper critical reading. So it's great to add those ideas and put them together to create more insight. And it's just helpful when it comes to studying. You just have that like baseline set up for yourself. So to make it easier in the future. And a lot of readings are independent to the lecture. So in high school, I remember we would do a reading and then the next day, it would be like, okay, first 10 minutes, like we'll go over what we were saying, but we don't have that in university. So it's really important that you kind of do this own deep reading on your own, this close reading, so that when you are in class and you immediately go into the lecture, you know what's going on and what the prof is referencing and what questions other people are asking. And in that sense, it's not a supplement. Like reading and doing those readings in university, you can't really get away with not doing them. Like I know a few people in high school used to pull up like No Fear Shakespeare. That will not help you in university. It's on such a more deeper base than that, that you really do need to go in there, because if you're just reading like online summaries or like Spark Notes or something like that, it's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form, because it actually leaves out a lot of information. But also, especially in an English-based degree, everything is about insight. Just like Meelad was saying before with 85% your voice, 15% quotations, that voice comes from your close reading. That comes from your annotations in the margins and your initial, what does this mean? And, oh, I wouldn't have said that. Those things in the margins that you create is what helps you with the papers later on and finding that voice rather than just reiterating what a text says. And that's kind of what I wanted to go over for close readings, really.
For sure. And I do want to mention for close readings that although you're going to be just, like Georgie mentioned, looking for those annotations, those ideas are essentially literacy terms that you're looking for. You want to look for, why did this author use a different stanza to start this section of the chapter? Why did they use alliteration here? Why did they use this allegory? It's things like that that you really miss when you just read a summary. Don't get me wrong, guys, I've been there. I've read Spark Notes before, but in the long term, it's going to hurt your general education. So use those sources if you feel that it's necessary, but not to the extent that it's overcompensating for your lack of readings.
Yeah, I
Do
was just
your
about
readings. Yeah,
if
absolutely. Do your readings and use those resources as you see fit, but never lack on your readings. Do and analyze them beyond just how much you're expected to.
exactly. Like if there's a really old text that you have no idea what's going on, like Spark Notes is great just to have a general, okay, who's talking to who right now? But don't let it like outdo your actual understanding of it. And just like I mentioned earlier, with creating connections, you want to create the connections while you're reading. So what Meelad was saying about, oh, this allegory, oh, this metaphor, stuff like that, that is great. And that is what you're looking for in addition to creating connections you made in other classes. So there could be a theorist, there could be a theory that you want to connect to your reading, like, oh, this is a Marxist thought. Like simple things like that really help you in the long run when it comes to your close reading.
Yeah. And yeah, excellent point about how close readings help you create connections. Absolutely. The next thing we wanted to talk to you guys about, a bit boring, but trust me, it's super fundamental, is citations. So obviously you guys know about plagiarism, and the risks of plagiarism in university are multiplied. In high school, you might fail the paper and get in a little bit of trouble. In university, you risk not just forfeiting your uh, mark in the class, but potentially your seat at school. So don't do it, guys. It's not worth it. Just stick to your own material. And if you're citing someone else, don't copy what they say word for word verbatim. If you do, make sure you cite it and there's a clear reason why you did that. Um, in university, there is a formula to citations. There's different ones. I'm sure you guys have been exposed to some like APA and MLA. Those are going to be used all the time in university. And they're actually essential to each and every paper, sometimes assignments too. So don't lack on these guys. You want to be using a very varied collection of reputable sources. What I mean by reputable sources is journal articles, published academics and scholars, uh, actual tangible peer-reviewed sources, not just the ones you find in, say, the New York Times. As much as I'd love to use a New York Times article inside my papers, those don't count as an academic resource. So to show you guys and give you a bit of an understanding of what I mean by an academic resource, I'm actually going to pull one up for you. So this is the UFC Library Database. It has a large collection of journals that and other books that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And this isn't just at UFC. Every major university has some kind of library database. So say, just for an example, I want to look into mercantilism. I'm doing a paper on the 1700s era empires of France, and I want to look into how the mercantilist system contributed to colonialism, for example. So as you can see here, I pulled up mercantilism, and it gives me access to a variety of books, journals, and as you can see right here, I have this peer-reviewed uh, quotation. So this gives me access and knowledge to know that other scholars and academics looked at this journal and confirmed that it's valid. It has a scientific method to it, and there's a genuine research that's being conducted here. So I take this resource, I can pull up the full text, and with my UFC, I can quickly sign in. And here we go, guys. We can take a key look at this journal article. A lot of them start off with an abstract and then give you introductions, some research notes, the way that they're going to be conducting this study. These are genuine sources. These are people who have taken time out of their day to run not only just tests and use tangible data to give us insight into whatever we're looking for, in this case, mercantilism, but also it's much more clean and directed than, say, a news article. So these are the kind of things you guys want to be looking for. And trust me, even if you think it looks intimidating, it's really not, because when you're looking at a real journal article or a real genuine source, you're exposed to so much more material. And even though it sounds overwhelming, it's actually a blessing, because you need more information to write your papers. And the information is sometimes hard to come by. So when you find a source, it's automatically like, hey, I have a bunch of new information I can talk about now, help support my point. So that's what you guys will see in the journal articles. Next, we'll move on to actual citations, which Georgie will explain.
Yeah, just before we get into that, I just wanted to mention when Meelad was talking about plagiarism on the initial citation slide, U of C, and like other universities offer it as well, but through the Student Center, U of C offers plagiarism workshops where you can actually go to them. They're not very long, they're like an hour long, and a professor, leader, they'll lead you through what counts as plagiarism, how to avoid it. There'll be some like interactive questions. And they also do workshops on plagiarism and working with peers, which is really insightful to first years, especially because that can also count as plagiarism if you're working with someone else sharing ideas and then going on to do an assignment. So it's just a really helpful thing if you go in there and you feel overwhelmed, because obviously profs are always going to help you if you ask them a citation question, but no prof is going to sit you down for hours or however long and go through citations with you. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, those are actually really good workshops to attend. But now I'll get into this. So this is Purdue L. I'm in English, so my formatting is always MLA. I literally use this every single time I write an essay. And as you can see, when Meelad's scrolling through, it sets you up with a really nice look at what goes into an MLA citation. And the further down you go, it shows you each step, what counts as what. Like, we know what an author is, but later down, like when there's title of container, it'll tell you what title of container means, and kind of highlight, as you can see, the Vintage Book of Contemporary American Short Stories, that counts as a container. And it just goes through it really nicely so that you have like a full-on checklist of this is what needs to be in my citation. While we're here, there's, Meelad doesn't have to click to it, but MLA on this Purdue also shows the basic format that you want for MLA, what they would look like if you were using a book only, if you were using an article only, and like the format setup. Because the way Meelad obviously writes a paper in APA is much different than MLA format. So it's great because you can interchange between APA, MLA, or Chicago on Purdue OWL, which is really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And just a note to you guys who eventually attend U of C or another major university, a lot of the times when you're actually citing a journal article, it gives you a preset of the kind of citation you want. So say, for example, that last article I was just looking at, the mercantilist one, that one has an option where you can say, cite this in APA 17th edition, and another option where you can get Chicago style citation, the MLA citation, and so forth. So don't be too stressed out about it, guys. Like it's
they
not,
don't want you
yeah,
to take, so they set it up nice for you.
It's just time consuming is what it is, really. So don't worry too much about it. Just make sure that you're doing them because they are important. All right. So we'll move on. All right. So that was basically our presentation. As we mentioned before, university is no walk in the park. It's going to take a lot of time and commitment to do well, but it's a fun process. Social science is an extension of your own learning and your life. When you're learning about social science, you're learning about human constructs, things that we made, not science where you're actually analyzing stuff that's already brought into being. So that's really interesting to us because we can make and break certain ideas. We can. That's how we've constantly evolved as a species. We're analyzing and reorganizing how we think about the world. So this is really important stuff, and it's really fun. And I really hope that you guys took an interest to it. My one takeaway the one takeaway I hope you guys have from this presentation is to be attentive. This will go a really long way in post-secondary as continuing to move forward with the idea of lifelong learning in mind is going to evolve and develop your capacity as a learner. And it's going to make you see the world in a different light. And that's beautiful because you want a fresh set of perspectives. The one thing I ask you guys to do from this presentation, if anything, is set some goals to challenge yourself and really see if you're making the progressions to become a lifelong learner and eventually a university student. You can take this improvement one day at a time. This doesn't have to be overnight. It could be something small as like, hey, okay, I'm going to find out what my program requirements are for this course in university. I'm going to work day and day to achieve those requirements. So that's essentially our presentation. We do have a little tidbit we wanted to give you guys about online school because we hadn't had a chance to talk about that, I don't believe. Georgie, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so just with online school, like as we know, like right now we're in online school, you guys are currently in school, but there is obviously that possibility with COVID going on that you guys might not get to do your first year um in person, which is obviously not what was expected, but these things that we've talked about in our presentation all still apply. Like it's not, if anything, I think they become more important now that it could possibly be online,
Mhm.
because nobody's there to push you and you don't have the community or the environment to push you through it. So I think the takeaways of this are really important. Also, what I wanted to add was in terms of what you can do now. There are clubs at U of C that are still going on, and obviously clubs at all other universities, but just at U of C specifically, there are clubs that are still going on, even though it's online and everything like that. But I think something that I found extremely important, especially being a transfer student, was a sense of community and a sense of like support.
Mhm.
So if you are kind of one of those social people who know that you thrive in a sort of group setting, then you can still look into clubs for upcoming U of C school years and everything like that because they're still offered online. And there's clubs in every section. There's like academic clubs and there's just like fun. I like to do this in my free time clubs.
Mhm.
So that's really beneficial in terms of a support system, not only just in general, like university lifestyle, but especially with COVID going on right now. It's really nice to have an online support, see you through the screen, talk to
Yeah.
you way communicating with others. So I would definitely look into that if you guys are interested. And there's like biomechanics club all the way to like Quidditch club for Harry Potter. So everyone can kind of find something that they're interested in for sure. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
All right.
say.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for attending our presentation. I've been Meelad. That was Georgie.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you guys taking your time to watch this presentation. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to spread the word about Bridge the Gap. We're really trying to get our name out to other schools. So thank you very much for that. And take
Thank
care.